I moved into the gated complex because I needed to believe in walls again. At 21, I was already tired in a way most people don't understand until much later. Active duty logistics doesn't sound glamorous, but it's constant motion, inventory, schedules, accountability. If something goes missing, it's your fault. If something fails, you fix it fast. Control is survival. That's why the break-in downtown rattled me so badly. I'd come home from evening duty to find my apartment door open just enough to notice. Nothing was stolen. No mess. No explanation. Someone had been inside, and they hadn't needed anything from me. That was worse than theft. So when this new place opened vacancies, I jumped. Gated entry, cameras, ID checks, patrols, the kind of place that advertised safety in bold letters. My unit was on the 3rd floor. Most of the building was empty. Renovations stalled, leasing issues, whatever excuse they gave. At first, I liked that part. No noise, no surprises. Silence felt like control. My days ran like clockwork. 0500 PT, shower, uniform, drive to base. Long hours, meal prep at night. Calls with my sister before bed. Routine was how I kept the world predictable. That's how I noticed him. Jim Calloway. He caught me in the stairwell one evening, smiling too easily. Mid-40s, clean clothes, polite voice. "You must be the soldier," he said. I nodded. "Yeah." "Figured," he replied. "You're always out early, back around 6, except Thursdays." I paused. "Thursdays, I stay late," I said carefully. He laughed. "Right, that's what I meant." I told myself it was coincidence. People notice patterns. That's normal. Still, my instincts stirred. The same quiet warning I'd learned not to ignore on base. But this wasn't a combat zone. This was a gated community with cameras. I went inside and locked the door. Just in case. Jim started appearing more often after that. Not aggressively, just conveniently. At the mailboxes, by the dumpsters, in the stairwell when the elevator was down. Always friendly, always watching. "You're disciplined," he said once. I like that. I didn't ask why. One evening, he invited me into his apartment. "Just to talk," he said. "Gets lonely here." I hesitated, then told myself I was being paranoid. I was trained to assess threats, not invent them. His apartment felt wrong immediately. No pictures, no decorations, just a couch and a chair, both angled toward the door, like he expected whoever entered to stay visible. Accounted for. He stood too close as he talked, close enough that I could smell his cologne, sharp, intentional. "You're usually asleep by 10, he said casually. I froze. "I hear your lights go out," he added quickly. Thin walls. They weren't thin. I smiled, thanked him for the chat, and left. Locked my door. Checked the deadbolt twice. That night I told myself fear was left over from the break-in. Trauma echoes, my therapist had said. Still, I slept light. The knocking woke me out of a dead sleep. Not normal knocking, not polite. Hard, fast, like fists slamming wood. Hannah. My name. I froze on the couch, phone in my hand, heart pounding so loud I was sure it carried through the door. I didn't answer, didn't move. The banging stopped. Silence rushed back in, thick and heavy. When I finally opened the door, the hallway was empty. Later, I noticed the light above my door, twisted loose, dark. Someone had wanted me blind. That night, I slept with my service knife under my pillow. After the light incident, my body stayed in a permanent low-grade alert. I replaced the bulb the next morning with a friend from base standing beside me, laughing it off. He joked about horror movies and faulty wiring. I laughed too, because that's what you do when you don't want to sound crazy. But I noticed Jim watching from his doorway the entire time, not smiling, just observing. I stopped taking the stairs. I varied my schedule when I could. Different departure times, different parking spots. I kept my blinds closed, even during the day. The cameras in the hallway that once comforted me now felt performative, present, but not watching the right things. Jim never knocked again. That scared me more than if he had. A few days later, my transfer orders came through. Unexpected, immediate, different base, different state. Normally, I would have fought it, asked questions, requested delay. Instead, I accepted without hesitation. I packed fast. Only essentials. No goodbyes, no forwarding address. The last night, I barely slept. Every sound felt intentional. Every shadow felt occupied. When morning came, I loaded my car before sunrise. As I drove toward the gate, my chest finally loosened, just slightly. Then I saw him. Jim stood near the security booth, hands in his pockets, watching my car roll forward. He didn't wave, didn't approach, just watched, head tilted, like he was committing something to memory. The guard checked my ID. The gate lifted. Jim's eyes never left me. I didn't look back. Years have passed. I've lived in safer places, louder places, places full of people and noise and life. I've upgraded locks. I've trained harder. I've learned to trust my instincts instead of arguing with them. Still, sometimes at night, I replay the details. How Jim knew my schedule before I told him. How his apartment was staged, not lived in. How the knocking stopped the moment I stayed silent. How the light was loosened, not broken. Those weren't accidents. They were tests. He never needed to touch me to leave damage. The fear followed me. The hyper-awareness. The understanding that safety systems are only as strong as the people watching them. I don't know what Jim was planning. I don't know if someone else moved into that apartment after I left. I don't know if he ever crossed the line somewhere else. What I do know is this. The gated community didn't save me. The cameras didn't save me. The locks didn't save me. My instincts did. I listened when something felt wrong. I stayed quiet when silence mattered. I left before curiosity turned into confirmation. Some threats don't announce themselves. They wait. They observe. They hope you doubt yourself long enough to make things easy. I won't do that again. People like to say houses are neutral. Wood, nails, drywall, nothing more. I used to believe that too, until October of 2019, when I moved into a freshly renovated rental on Ashwood Lane in Lexington, Kentucky. White siding, narrow porch, fresh paint that still smelled faintly chemical when the sun warmed it. A place that looked like a promise. Emily called it our reset. I called it temporary. I had left Beckley, West Virginia behind because that's what you do when someone you love tells you there's a future waiting somewhere else. Emily sounded confident when she talked about Lexington. Better work, better life, space to grow. She'd already accepted a position as a veterinary technician, and I had the luxury of remote IT work. On paper, it made sense. The house was 2 stories, but it felt taller than that, like it loomed. The upstairs had 2 small bedrooms and a bathroom with creaky pipes. Downstairs was open, bright, and hers almost immediately. Emily took the master bedroom without discussion. I took the spare upstairs for my office. That word, office, would quietly turn into bedroom within weeks. The first night we slept there, Emily stood in the kitchen, arms crossed, surveying the space. "It's quiet," she said. "Good quiet or bad quiet?" I asked. She shrugged. "Just quiet." That should have been my first warning. The house made noises at night. Pops, groans, footsteps that weren't footsteps. I blamed temperature changes, new materials settling. But the silence between Emily and me was louder. We stopped eating together. Conversations turned into reminders. "Did you pay the internet bill?" "I'll do it tonight." "You left the upstairs light on again." She never yelled. Emily didn't need to. Her distance did the damage just fine. By November, the house felt divided. Downstairs smelled like her coffee and her shampoo. Upstairs smelled like electronics, stale air, and isolation. I told myself it was just a phase. Houses take time. Relationships take longer. I didn't know yet that Ashwood Lane wasn't waiting for us to fix things. It was waiting for them to break. I started spending more time upstairs because it was easier than noticing how little Emily looked at me. My desk faced the window that overlooked the backyard and the dead-end alley beyond it. At night, the alley swallowed light whole. No street lamps, just darkness pressed flat against the fence. Gaming became my routine. Xbox on. Headset plugged in. The glow of the screen made the room feel less empty, less honest. Emily would pause at the bottom of the stairs sometimes. "You coming down?" she'd ask. "In a bit." She'd nod and disappear, footsteps fading into the kitchen or bedroom. No argument, no disappointment. That was worse. One night, while waiting for a match to load, I opened Reddit. That's where I met Maya. Just a username at first, then messages, jokes about bad bosses, complaints about insomnia. We talked about movies we loved and cities we'd never visit. Nothing flirtatious at first, just human. "You still awake?" she'd ask at 2 a.m. "Yeah," I'd type back. "House is loud." "Mine too," she replied. "Like it doesn't want to sleep." That line stuck with me. Emily refused counseling when I brought it up. "We're fine," she said flatly. "You're just restless." "Restless isn't the same as unhappy," I said. She looked at me then, really looked. "Isn't it?" After that, I stopped trying. I planned a December trip to Phoenix, telling Emily it was for clarity, for space. "When are you leaving?" she asked. "Mid-December." She nodded, too calm. "Okay." The house creaked that night like it was listening. The day everything collapsed was quiet. Too quiet. I was showering upstairs when I heard the first crack. Sharp. Violent. Like wood snapping under pressure. Then another. A deeper crash that shook the floor. I killed the water and ran out. Heart already pounding. My Xbox lay in pieces on the floor. Plastic shattered. Wires torn free. Emily stood over it, gripping a baseball bat I didn't even know we owned. Her hands were steady. "You're not leaving," she said. Not shouted, not cried. Decided. "Emily," I said slowly, "put the bat down." "You were planning it," she replied. Talking to her, planning to disappear. "It wasn't like that." She laughed once, empty, then swung the bat into the wall beside me. Drywall exploded. Something primal took over. I ran. She chased me through the hallway, bat slamming into door frames, the house screaming with each impact. I locked myself in the guest bathroom, bracing the door as she struck it once, twice. "Open it," she said calmly. "We can talk." I didn't answer. When the silence came, I ran barefoot through the back door, into the alley, lungs burning, never looking back. The house didn't stop me. It just watched. I don't remember how long I ran. Just that the cold air burned my lungs, and the gravel in the alley tore at my feet. I didn't stop until the houses blurred together, and my body forced me to. I ended up at a roadside motel off New Circle Road, the kind with flickering vacancy signs and curtains that never quite close. I paid cash. I didn't want a paper trail. Inside the room, I locked the door twice, shoved a chair under the handle, and sat on the edge of the bed, shaking. Every passing headlight sent panic through me. I kept expecting Emily's car to pull in, her headlights washing over the thin curtains like search beams. My phone buzzed non-stop. "I didn't mean it. You made me do that. Come back so we can talk. If you leave like this, don't bother coming back." Apologies and threats tangled together, impossible to separate. I didn't respond. I powered the phone off and slept with the bathroom light on, shoes still beside the bed in case I had to run again. By morning, fear had settled into something colder. Clarity. I drove straight to West Virginia, stopping only for gas. I didn't return to Ashwood Lane. I didn't collect furniture. I didn't argue about deposits or shared belongings. None of it mattered more than staying alive. My mother opened the door and didn't ask questions when she saw my feet wrapped in gauze and my hands shaking. "You're home," she said. That was enough. Emily didn't stop messaging right away. Days of texts turned into voicemails, then silence. Weeks later, a mutual acquaintance told me Emily had been telling neighbors I abandoned her without warning, that I was unstable, that I had just disappeared. I wanted to scream the truth. Instead, I let it go. Some nights, I dreamed of that hallway, the bats striking walls, the sound echoing like gunshots. I woke up gasping, heart racing, convinced I was still trapped upstairs with nowhere to go. The house on Ashwood Lane didn't chase me. It didn't need to. It had already done its work. Years have passed, but some spaces still tighten my chest without warning. Narrow hallways, split staircases, two-story homes where one floor feels disconnected from the other. I didn't used to notice architecture. Now, I measure exits instinctively. Therapy helped. Naming what happened helped more. People like to call it a bad breakup, but that feels dishonest. What happened wasn't mutual destruction. It was control cracking into violence. I've replayed it 1,000 times, searching for the moment I missed. The first night the house felt divided. The way Emily never raised her voice. The calm in her eyes when she said I wasn't leaving. I don't believe the house made her violent, but I do believe it amplified everything we refused to confront. The isolation, the silence, the unspoken resentment growing in separate rooms. Houses don't have intentions, but they hold pressure well. Ashwood Lane trapped us inside our unresolved lives. I learned something uncomfortable in that place. Love doesn't excuse fear. Familiarity doesn't equal safety, and quiet isn't peace when it's built on avoidance. Sometimes I still think about Emily, not with longing, with distance. I hope she found help. I hope she never scared someone the way she scared me, but I no longer wonder whether I overreacted. I didn't. Leaving saved my life. And that's the truth houses never tell you until it's almost too late. Walls don't protect you from the people inside them. Love should never require endurance of fear. Silence is not stability, and distance is not peace. When a place or a person makes you feel trapped, leaving is not failure. Sometimes survival is the bravest ending you'll ever write. I bought the house because I was tired of listening to other people breathe. That sounds dramatic, but if you've ever lived with roommates well into your late 20s, you understand. Thin walls, passive-aggressive notes, someone always eating your food and swearing they didn't. I wanted space that was mine, silence that belonged to me. Redwood Lane offered that in abundance. The house sat at the edge of a small Oregon town most people only pass through. Tall trees pressed close to the property, their branches knitting together overhead like a loose ceiling. The realtor called it secluded. I called it peaceful. After years of apartments stacked like filing cabinets, this place felt like an exhale. The first week was bliss. I walked barefoot on hardwood floors at midnight. I cooked meals without headphones. I slept spread out like a starfish, unafraid of bothering anyone. Then the quiet changed. It wasn't sudden. It crept in the way cold does. Slowly, until one night you realize you're shivering. The house made noises I wasn't used to. Pipes knocking, wood popping, wind moving through the trees like something breathing outside the walls. That's when I started staying up later. I worked freelance web design, so my schedule was flexible in the worst way. Nights blurred into mornings. I spent more time online, forums, Discord servers, niche corners of the internet where people talked about things most folks avoided. Philosophy, societal collapse, survival theory. Not because I believed the world was ending, but because those conversations felt awake. That's where I met Lucas Wolf. His username popped up in a thread about urban fragility. He wrote clearly, confidently, not ranting, not aggressive, just observant. We started replying to each other, then messaging, then voice chatting while gaming late at night. "You think people disappear because someone takes them?" he asked once. "Usually," I said. He chuckled softly. "Nah, most of the time no one notices they're gone." I should have felt uneasy then. I didn't. Lucas became a regular presence in my nights. He said he'd served overseas. Didn't specify where. Long enough to learn how systems fail, he told me. He talked about patterns, how cities were illusions of safety, how isolation wasn't weakness but camouflage. It all sounded philosophical, almost poetic. "You live alone, right?" he asked one night. "Yeah, just bought a place." "That's a big move." "Feels like it," I said. Still getting used to the quiet. Quiet seemed to interest him. He asked where the house was, casually at first. State, town size, whether I had close neighbors. I told myself he was just curious. When you spend enough time online, you stop questioning intimacy that grows through shared words instead of shared space. "So how's it laid out?" he asked another night. I laughed. "Why? Planning a burglary?" "Habit," he said lightly. "I always map rooms in my head." I felt something tighten in my chest, but I ignored it. People joke. People say weird things online. That's normal. Then, a few weeks later, he said, "I might be passing through Oregon." I didn't respond right away. "Could crash for a couple nights," he added. "Hotels are overpriced." My finger hovered over the keyboard. Every instinct I had whispered don't. But loneliness is persuasive. It sounds reasonable, friendly. "Sure," I typed. "For a couple nights." Lucas arrived close to midnight. I remember opening the door and being struck by the smell. Metal and oil, like a mechanic's garage. He stood on the porch with a duffel bag slung over one shoulder, eyes scanning past me into the house. "Ethan," he said, smiling. "Good to finally meet." He didn't hug me, didn't offer a handshake, just stepped inside like he already knew where he was going. He dropped the bag on the floor with a dull clank. "You can take the shower if you want," I said. "I'm good." He slept on the living room floor, refused the couch, rearranged a chair so it faced the hallway. "Better angles," he explained. That night, while we drank cheap whiskey, he looked around my living room and said, "You know how easy it is to make someone disappear in a place like this?" He smiled right after. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. That was the first night I locked my bedroom door. Lucas left without saying goodbye. I woke up to the sound of my front door closing, slow and deliberate, like he wanted me to hear it but not catch him. By the time I reached the hallway, the house was empty. His duffel bag was gone. The chair he'd repositioned still faced the hallway, like an eye that hadn't blinked yet. For a long time, I just stood there. There was no note, no text, no message explaining anything. Just the sudden absence of someone who had taken up too much space without ever unpacking. At first, I felt relief. Pure, uncomplicated relief. I cleaned the house aggressively, wiped surfaces he'd touched, scrubbed the muddy boot prints from the hallway, shoved the chair back where it belonged. I told myself I was reclaiming my space. But the house didn't reset. At night, every creak sounded intentional. I started noticing how visible my windows were from the tree line. I double-checked locks, then checked them again. Sleep came in shallow pieces, interrupted by dreams where I woke up and someone was already standing in the room. I stopped staying up late online. I stopped answering unknown messages. I told myself I was just growing up, settling down. Months passed, life stabilized, work picked up. I started dating someone from town, though she never stayed the night. I didn't offer. Redwood Lane felt like something private, fragile. Then one evening, scrolling through an old forum out of habit, I saw his name. Not a message from him, but about him. A thread discussing a man questioned in connection with a missing persons case near a forest highway. No arrest, no charges, just unusual behavior and inconsistent statements. Someone mentioned an ex-military background. Another mentioned the name Lucas Wolfe. My hands went cold. The dates lined up. The location was close enough to make my stomach turn. I stared at the screen until the words blurred. Lucas hadn't just passed through Oregon. He'd been active here. I shut my laptop and sat in the dark living room, listening to the house breathe around me. For the first time since he left, I admitted the truth I'd been avoiding. If I'd ignored my instincts just a little longer, I might not be here to read that thread. Winter came early that year. Snow gathered at the edges of the driveway, muting the world. Redwood Lane felt even more isolated, the trees heavy with white, the road quiet for days at a time. One evening, I stood by the living room window, watching my own reflection layered over the dark outside. I thought about Lucas standing in that same room, about how easily he'd fit into the house, like he was testing it, measuring it, seeing how it might work for him. That was the part that haunted me most. Not the jokes, not the unsettling comments, but how close I came to accepting all of it as normal. How I'd explained away every red flag because I wanted connection more than safety. The house hadn't protected me. It hadn't warned me. It hadn't creaked louder or slammed doors shut. I had. Some small, stubborn part of me had listened when something felt wrong. I locked my door. I stayed alert. I didn't confront him, but I didn't fully trust him either. That was enough. I sold the house the following spring. People asked why. I told them it was too far out, too quiet, that I wanted something closer to town. All of that was true, just not the whole truth. Sometimes, late at night, I still think about how evil doesn't always announce itself. It doesn't kick in doors or wear a mask. Sometimes it talks like you, laughs like you, shares your interests, earns your trust one harmless conversation at a time. Sometimes it waits for an invitation. And the most terrifying part is realizing how easily you can almost give it one. Loneliness can blur judgment, and familiarity can disguise danger. Trust your instincts, even when they're quiet, even when doubt feels rude. Evil doesn't always force its way in. More often, it's welcomed by politeness, denial, and the hope that we're just imagining things. Listening to yourself can be the difference between an unsettling story and one that never gets told at all. I used to believe houses could heal you, that if you picked the right street, the right paint color, the right backyard view, the past would loosen its grip, that memories were tied to places, and if you changed the place, you changed the memories too. I was wrong. When we moved into 1487 Hollow Ridge Drive, I told myself this was the end of running, end of the apartments with thin walls, end of night shifts and half-slept mornings, end of seeing my wife flinch every time silence lasted too long. I wanted something solid, predictable, a place where my kids could grow up without learning fear too early. The listing called it perfect for raising kids. I repeated that line like a prayer. What no one tells you is that safety isn't built into drywall and locks. It isn't guaranteed by square footage or cul-de-sacs. Sometimes danger doesn't come because of who you are, but because of who someone else was supposed to be. And sometimes, the scariest moment of your life happens when strangers realize they're in the wrong house. I'm Aaron Whitmore, former Marine, insurance adjuster, husband, dad. I don't scare easily, or at least, I didn't used to. After the miscarriage, Megan stopped sleeping through the night. She'd lie awake staring at the ceiling, one hand resting on her stomach like she could still feel something there. I couldn't fix that. No amount of logic or reassurance touched it, so when the opportunity came to buy a newly built home in Cedar Falls, Iowa, I grabbed it. New walls, I told her. No history. She smiled weakly. That sounds nice. The house was 2 stories, beige siding, white trim, nothing special. And that was the point. Western-facing backyard, small in-ground pool, unfinished basement. The kind of place developers clone 100 times because families trust familiar shapes. The kids loved it instantly. Lily claimed the bigger bedroom upstairs, already planning where her posters would go. Max ran laps through the living room, pretending the hallway was a racetrack. "This is ours?" he asked, breathless. "Yeah, buddy," I said. "This is ours." I focused on details. Hinges, window locks, the garage camera that lagged exactly 2 seconds. Megan teased me for it. "You're not on patrol anymore," she said gently. "Habit," I replied. The neighborhood felt curated. Joggers at sunset, porch lights flicking on at the same time, neighbors who waved but never asked questions. I liked that. Distance felt safer. For the first few weeks, nothing happened. That should have been my warning. It was a Thursday, just after midnight. I remember because I'd fallen asleep on the couch watching a rerun of something I didn't care about. The house was quiet, too quiet, the way it gets when everyone's deep asleep. Then came the sound, a dull thud, not loud, not sharp, heavy, controlled. I sat up instantly. Years of training don't leave you, they wait. My heart rate spiked, but my mind went calm. I listened. Footsteps. Not upstairs, not familiar. Too many. I was halfway to the hallway when the living room exploded with light. 4 men, masks, flashlights. One of them already inside my space, gun pressed into my ribs like it belonged there. "Don't move!" someone barked. Megan screamed upstairs. Lily started crying. Max yelled my name. "Easy," the man with the gun said. "Everyone relax." They moved fast, professional. One crowbar scraped tile, another tore through drawers with purpose, not curiosity. "Where's the safe?" one demanded. "I don't have one," I said. "Basement wall," another added. "Where is it?" "I don't know what you're talking about." They forced us onto the couch. Megan was shaking so hard I thought she'd collapse. Lily buried her face into Megan's side. Then one of them kicked over a framed photo, the picture from moving day. The room went still. One man leaned closer, flashlight hovering over the image. "This isn't them." "What?" another snapped. "They've got kids. That wasn't in the brief." Silence, then frustration. "Wrong house," someone muttered. The gun eased away from my ribs. They backed away slowly, like we were the problem. "Don't call anyone for 10 minutes, the man said. Not threatening, almost annoyed. "For your own good." Then they were gone. Doors open. Cold air rushing in. Silence screaming. Police came, took notes, measured footprints, shrugged at the lack of theft. "Mistaken identity," one officer said. "Happens more than you think." I didn't sleep that night, or many nights after. I stayed in the living room with a gun I hated owning. Megan checked the locks until her fingers were raw. Max refused to swim. "The pool can see the yard," he whispered once. Years later, we still live there. We smile. We host barbecues. We wave at neighbors. But I know the truth. Safety isn't something a house gives you. Sometimes it's something you lose the moment someone realizes they came looking for another family and found yours instead. After the police stopped calling and the neighbors stopped asking, the house settled back into its routines. But we didn't. Time passed in normal ways on the surface. Lily finished 4th grade. Max learned to ride a bike in the cul-de-sac. Megan planted hydrangeas along the fence. From the outside, we looked like every other family on Hollow Ridge Drive. Inside, we lived with a gap. A thin, invisible crack that ran through everything. I started waking up before dawn, making coffee in the dark so I wouldn't disturb anyone. I walked the perimeter every morning, checking locks, testing windows, scanning the yard for signs I knew I wouldn't find. The garage camera still lagged 2 seconds. I replaced it, twice. Megan tried to be patient, but fear is heavy, and carrying it alone makes people brittle. "You can't keep living like this," she said one night while I double-checked the back door. "They're gone." "They were never here for us," I said. "That's worse." She didn't answer that. Lily stopped hanging pictures in her room. She said she didn't want strangers to know what she liked. Max asked if we could move again. When I asked why, he shrugged. They knew where we lived. That sentence hit harder than anything the intruders had done. I called the developer, the title company, anyone who might know who lived here before us. The answers were vague. A shell purchase, a delayed occupancy, nothing illegal, nothing solid. One night, months later, I dreamed of the living room filled with light again. Same masks, same voices. But this time, they didn't stop when they realized their mistake. I woke up soaked in sweat, Megan already sitting up beside me. "You were talking," she said softly. "What did I say?" She hesitated. "You said, wrong house doesn't mean wrong people." That was when I understood something I hadn't wanted to admit. The danger wasn't just that they'd come back. It was that they'd changed us permanently. The house didn't feel cursed. It felt exposed. We talked about moving more than once. Late-night conversations when the kids were asleep and honesty felt unavoidable. "But what if it happened somewhere else?" Megan asked. "What if this is just how the world is now?" She wasn't wrong, so we stayed. I took a day job. I learned my neighbors' names. I installed better lighting, real security, not just the illusion of it. I taught Lily and Max what to do if someone ever came into the house again, without scaring them more than necessary. Life filled in around the fear. It always does. Years later, at a neighborhood barbecue, someone joked about how safe Hollow Ridge Drive was. "Nothing bad ever happens here," he laughed. I smiled. I didn't correct him. Because safety isn't the absence of danger, it's the presence of awareness. Every so often, I still think about the men who came into our home. I wonder who they were really looking for. What was hidden in a basement wall that never existed for us? Whether another family paid the price we avoided by accident. That thought used to haunt me. Now it grounds me, because I learned something that night, something no brochure or realtor ever mentions. You don't protect your family by pretending the world is gentle. You protect them by accepting that it isn't, and choosing to be present anyway. We still live at 1487 Hollow Ridge Drive. It's still a beautiful house, but I don't believe houses make you safe anymore. People do. True safety doesn't come from appearances, locations, or promises. It comes from awareness, preparation, and protecting the people you love without denial. Evil doesn't always target you directly, but when it brushes past your life, it leaves marks that change how you see the world forever. What matters most is not pretending those marks aren't there, but learning how to live wisely with them. I didn't buy the house because I loved it. I bought it because I needed proof that my life was still moving forward. At 29, newly divorced and carrying the quiet weight of a past burglary that had rewired my nerves, owning a home felt like armor, something solid, something that locked. Renting had always made me feel temporary, like I was one bad night away from packing boxes again. A mortgage, I told myself, meant roots. 418 Holloway Drive looked harmless enough. Narrow, 2 stories, pale siding that blended into the foggy Oregon mornings. Eugene has a way of feeling sleepy and watchful at the same time. Porch lights glowing through mist, neighbors waving but never asking questions. I liked that distance. I needed it. Still, the house was too big for one person, too quiet at night, too many corners where sound could hide. So when I decided to rent out the spare bedroom, I told myself it was about money. But really, it was about not being alone. That decision almost cost me my life. Brandon Hale moved in at the end of March. He was the kind of person you trusted without thinking about it. Soft-spoken, polite, early 30s. Grad student. Photography. References checked out. Credit clean. During the lease signing, he smiled apologetically and said, "I should probably mention, I sleepwalk sometimes." He laughed like it was a harmless quirk. "Just don't cook," I joked, forcing a smile. "Fair rule," he said. The first few weeks were easy. Brandon kept to himself. He cooked late, washed his dishes, paid rent early. I worked long hours at a new job and came home exhausted, grateful for the presence of another human breathing somewhere in the house. But sleep never came easy for me. Every sound felt amplified. The settling of walls, the tick of the heater, the occasional floorboard creak. I told myself it was just adjustment. Trauma leaves echoes. I knew that. The first scream came 3 weeks in. I bolted upright in bed, heart hammering, the sound ripping through the hallway like someone being dragged underwater. By the time I reached Brandon's door, it had stopped. "Brandon?" I knocked. He opened the door, groggy, hair flattened. "Yeah? You were yelling." His face flushed with embarrassment. "Sorry. Night terrors. Happen sometimes." I wanted to believe him. I needed to. After that, it happened more often. Shouting, thrashing, words that didn't make sense. Every morning, he looked genuinely confused when I brought it up. "I don't remember any of it," he said once, rubbing his eyes. "That bad?" "It's loud," I said carefully. "I'll talk to my doctor." He never did. The footsteps started in May, soft at first, bare feet padding down the hallway at 2 or 3 in the morning. I'd open my door and see Brandon standing there, eyes glassy, posture loose like a marionette with slack strings. "Brandon," I'd whisper, "you're sleepwalking." He'd nod slowly, unfocused. I learned how to guide him back to bed without waking him. One hand on his shoulder, gentle pressure, slow steps. He followed easily, murmuring things under his breath. "Need the angle right," he whispered once. "What angle?" I asked. No response. Cabinet doors started being left open in the mornings. Lights flipped on. Once, I found the back door unlocked. "You've got to be careful," I said, trying to keep my voice light. "You're scaring me." "I swear, I don't remember," he said, genuinely upset. "I'd never go into your room. I promise." I believed him, until the objects started appearing. A toothbrush at the foot of my bed, a screwdriver on my dresser, my spare house key laid neatly beside my alarm clock. Each time, Brandon denied it, horrified. "I would never do that awake," he said. "If I did, I'd get help, I swear." I started sleeping lighter, then barely at all. The house no longer felt quiet. It felt observant. Chapter 3. The Photo. I found the photo on a Sunday morning. A Polaroid, tucked behind my nightstand, half hidden like it didn't want to be discovered. My stomach dropped before my brain caught up. It was me, asleep, face turned toward the door, taken from inside my bedroom. When I confronted Brandon, his hands shook. I must have taken it while sleepwalking," he said, forcing a laugh that didn't land. "That's messed up, huh?" "That's not funny," I said. "I didn't mean to," he insisted. "I swear." That night, I installed a lock on my bedroom door. At 2:17 a.m., something slammed into it. Once, twice, again. Brandon's voice erupted, raw, animal, screaming words I couldn't understand. The door bowed inward. Wood cracked. I screamed as the lock splintered. Through the gap, I saw him plunge a kitchen knife into my mattress, over and over, exactly where I should have been. Then he stopped. I was asleep," he whimpered suddenly. "Why are you screaming?" I locked myself in the bathroom until dawn, and when morning came, I knew the truth. He hadn't been sleepwalking, he'd been rehearsing. Morning didn't bring relief. It brought clarity, and clarity was worse. After sunrise, I stayed locked in the bathroom until the house felt still enough to move. I wrapped myself in a hoodie, grabbed my phone, and crept back into my bedroom. The mattress was ruined. The sheets were shredded, foam exposed, knife marks clustered where my torso usually rested. I stood there shaking, realizing how close I'd come to not waking up at all. Brandon was gone. His room was empty. No backpack, no shoes, no jacket. The front door stood unlocked. Panic hit in waves, sharp and nauseating. I called the police with hands that wouldn't stop trembling, my words tumbling over each other as I tried to explain sleepwalking, knives, photos, screams. While I waited, I started packing. I needed clothes, documents, anything important. I couldn't stay another night. That's when I found the shoebox. It was tucked under my bed, pushed far back where I never looked. Inside were Polaroids, dozens of them. Me sleeping. Me brushing my teeth. Me unlocking the front door after work. Some were labeled with dates and times in careful handwriting. Under the photos were schedules. My schedules. Work hours, gym days, grocery runs. At the bottom of the box sat the knife, clean, wrapped in a dish towel. I collapsed onto the floor and threw up. The police arrived 20 minutes later. They photographed everything, bagged the box, dusted for prints. One officer kept his voice steady while another avoided eye contact. "He's gone?" I asked. They nodded. "He took his things," one said. "That usually means premeditation." They searched the neighborhood, checked traffic cameras. Nothing. Brandon Hale had vanished as cleanly as he'd entered my life. That night I slept on a friend's couch with the lights on. Every sound felt like a countdown. Every shadow felt intentional. The scariest part wasn't the knife. It was realizing how long he'd been practicing, how patient he'd been, how safe I'd felt while danger memorized my life. I sold the house 6 months later. People told me that was dramatic, that I was letting fear win, that it was just one bad experience. They didn't understand that the house wasn't the problem. I was, or rather, the version of me that now existed because of what happened. I couldn't sleep in unfamiliar spaces anymore. Hotels felt hostile. Guest rooms felt exposed. Even friends' houses made my chest tighten. I installed locks everywhere I lived. Bedroom doors, sliding doors, windows. I slept with lights on and music playing. Anything to break the silence. The police never found Brandon. No charges, no arrest, no explanation neat enough to close the door in my head. Sometimes I wonder if he ever really sleepwalked at all, or if that was just the story he practiced first. I moved apartments twice after selling the house. I live alone now. I don't rent rooms. I don't ignore red flags for the sake of comfort. Loneliness feels safer than compromise. Every once in a while, I still wake up at 2:17 a.m. I check the lock, then the handle, then the window. I tell myself I survived, that I trusted my instincts before it was too late. But survival changes you. It teaches you that danger doesn't always announce itself. Sometimes it whispers, sometimes it apologizes, sometimes it waits quietly down the hall, pretending to be harmless until you stop paying attention. I don't believe in monsters under the bed anymore. I believe in the ones who live with you, learn you, and smile while they wait. Trust without boundaries can be as dangerous as fear without reason. Evil doesn't always look violent or loud. It can appear polite, quiet, and apologetic. Listening to your instincts, setting firm boundaries, and prioritizing your safety is never an overreaction. Sometimes, the difference between survival and tragedy is believing what your fear is trying to tell you before someone else acts on it. Burnout doesn't arrive all at once. It leaks in slowly. Like water through a ceiling you keep promising yourself you'll fix. By the time I left Chicago in October of 2018, I wasn't just tired. I was hollowed out. My relationship had collapsed quietly, the way things do when neither person has the energy to fight anymore. My job as a remote copywriter paid well enough, but it demanded late nights and endless revisions that made every day feel unfinished. Asheville felt like the opposite of that life. Mountains, trees, quiet. The house at 47 Fern Hollow Road was a craftsman-style place tucked just far enough off the main road to feel private. Tan siding, a sloped roof, a narrow gravel driveway that curved behind the house and disappeared into trees before looping back out. When I asked the landlord about it, he waved it off. "Old access path, nobody uses it now," he said. "Kinda charming, right?" I wanted charming. I wanted silence that didn't buzz. The first night I slept there, rain tapped softly against the roof, and I lit candles in the living room just to watch the shadows move. Storms had always comforted me. They made the world feel smaller, safer, like everyone else was staying inside too. I worked late, headphones on, typing through the sound of wind in the trees. Somewhere around midnight, I realized how quiet it really was. No sirens, No neighbors arguing through thin apartment walls, just the house breathing around me. The house was old enough to make noises, pops in the walls, a groan when the temperature dropped. I told myself it was settling. In the mornings, neighbors waved politely from a distance. No names exchanged. No conversations. Just smiles that didn't invite questions. That suited me fine. I believed I was alone out there in the best possible way. I didn't know yet that isolation has a way of attracting attention, or that silence can carry farther than sound. Living alone in a detached house messes with your head at first. At least, that's what I kept telling myself. The back motion light turned on a few times when I knew nothing was there. I blamed raccoons, wind, faulty wiring. The screen door was unlocked twice when I was sure I'd latched it. Muscle memory, I decided. Burnout brain. Every explanation felt reasonable on its own. I fell into a routine. Late mornings, long writing sessions, early dinners, and work again until midnight. When storms rolled in, I lit candles and opened my laptop at the kitchen table, rain streaking the windows like static. One afternoon, while taking the trash out, I noticed the gate near the back fence was open. "That's weird," I muttered, closing it. I didn't remember opening it, but I also didn't remember a lot of small things lately. Grief and exhaustion blur the edges of days. I mentioned it casually to my landlord in an email. "Probably nothing," he replied. "This area's quiet. People keep to themselves." That night, I double-checked the locks anyway. On November 3rd, the weather turned ugly. Thunder rolled low and heavy, the kind that rattles glass. I loved it. I made tea, lit extra candles, and settled into work. At 11:47 p.m., everything went black. No lights, no Wi-Fi. The house fell into a deeper kind of quiet, broken only by rain hammering the roof and branches scraping close enough to sound intentional. I checked my phone. No signal boost without power. "Okay," I whispered. "It's fine." Then came the knocking. Not at the front door, at the back. 3 slow knocks. Measured. Patient. I didn't move. Another set followed. Then a voice. "Mara," a man said calmly. "I know you're home. I just need to use your phone. My car died down the road." He said my name like it belonged to him. Fear doesn't always scream. Sometimes it settles cold and precise, telling you exactly how bad things could get. I stood frozen in the kitchen, candle flame trembling in my hand. I hadn't told anyone my first name since moving in. Not neighbors, not delivery drivers. "Mara," he said again, softer this time. "I don't want to scare you." That's when I knew he already had. I edged toward the narrow kitchen window and lifted the curtain just enough to see. He stood on the back step, soaked from the rain, hood down, hands visible. Average height, calm posture, no desperation in his voice. He smiled when he noticed the movement. "I just need a minute," he said. "Storm knocked everything out." Every instinct in me screamed not to respond. I backed away slowly, careful not to let the floor creak, and locked myself in the bathroom. I sat on the floor, knees to my chest, hand over my mouth as the knocking stopped. The rain masked his footsteps as they moved, slowly, around the house. I heard him pause beneath a window, then another, a soft rattle at the side door handle. I stared at the bathroom lock like it was the only thing keeping the world out. After what felt like forever, but couldn't have been more than 15 minutes, the power flickered back on. Lights hummed. The house exhaled. I waited. Then I ran for my phone and dialed 911 with shaking fingers. By the time the police arrived, he was gone. They found muddy footprints near the back door leading toward the woods, then nothing. "Probably using the storm as cover," one officer said gently. "You did the right thing calling." I nodded, but I knew something they didn't. That knock wasn't random. Someone had already been watching. The police left just after 2 a.m. Their cruisers disappeared down Fern Hollow Road, red and blue lights swallowed by the rain and trees. The house felt too big afterward, like it had stretched while I wasn't looking. Every room seemed to hold its breath. I didn't sleep. I sat on the couch with all the lights on, phone clutched in my hand, jumping at every sound. Wind dragged branches across the siding. Water dripped somewhere inside the walls. Normal house noises, I told myself. Normal didn't feel believable anymore. By morning, the storm had scrubbed everything clean. The footprints were gone. The back steps looked untouched, like no one had ever stood there. That almost bothered me more than if the evidence had remained. I tried to return to routine, work, coffee, emails, but the house no longer felt neutral. I noticed things I'd ignored before. My trash cans had shifted overnight, closer to the fence. The gate was unlatched again. Once, after a light rain, I saw a handprint on the back door glass, faint, smeared, gone by afternoon. I called the landlord. "Probably condensation," he said. "Older glass does that." "Someone knew my name," I said. "That's not condensation." He paused. "You're safe now. Just keep things locked." Neighbors waved like always, friendly, distant. When I tried to ask one woman if she'd seen anyone strange during the storm, she smiled politely and said, "No, honey," then went back inside. At night, I stopped lighting candles. Darkness felt dangerous now, like an invitation. I slept with the bedroom door locked and a chair wedged beneath the handle. Every knock, on TV, in a dream, in real life, sent my heart racing. I replayed his voice constantly, calm, confident, certain I'd answer. That was the part I couldn't shake. He hadn't knocked like someone desperate. He knocked like someone who expected to be let in. I stayed one more month. I told myself I needed time to calm down, to prove I wasn't running from shadows. But fear doesn't fade when it's earned. It sharpens. Nothing else happened. Not directly. No more knocks. No voices. But the small things continued. The gate. The trash cans. Once, my doormat was turned sideways. I stopped working late. I stopped enjoying storms. Rain no longer made the world feel smaller. It made it feel hidden. One evening, as I stood locking the back door for the third time, I realized something simple and devastating. I didn't feel safe in my own home. Not tired, not anxious, unsafe. That was enough. I broke the lease early and moved into a secured apartment building closer to town. Cameras, key fobs, neighbors I could hear through walls. The noise felt comforting. The police report listed the incident as suspicious but inconclusive. No suspect, no follow-up. Life moved on. But even now, years later, I avoid houses with back doors facing woods. I tense up when someone knocks during a storm. I never answer unless I'm expecting someone. I don't wonder who he was anymore. I know what he was. Someone who watched first, waited, learned my name, chose his moment carefully. The house on Fern Hollow Road didn't protect me. It revealed how vulnerable quiet can be, and how thin the line is between solitude and isolation. Trust your instincts, especially when they speak softly. Danger doesn't always announce itself with violence. Sometimes it arrives politely, already knowing your name. Peace isn't found in silence alone, but in safety, connection, and listening when something feels wrong. I was 4 years old when my parents decided we needed a new beginning. I didn't understand what that meant back then. I didn't know anything about mortgages, interest rates, or why my parents whispered in the kitchen after they thought I was asleep. All I knew was that we were leaving the apartment where I could hear the neighbors through the walls and moving into a real house. A house with stairs. A house with a yard. A house my parents kept calling ours like that word alone could fix everything. The first thing I remember about 418 Willow Bend Drive was the smell. Fresh paint mixed with old dust. It was sharp in my nose, almost sour, and it clung to everything. My new bedroom had white walls, beige carpet, and a window that looked out at trees that seemed too close, like they were leaning in to listen. These noises are normal, my mom said the first night when I asked why the house kept clicking and popping. Houses settle, my dad added, already tired. But the apartment never settled. It never groaned or sighed or made sounds that felt like breathing. My dad had started volunteering with the local fire auxiliary not long after we moved in. He said it made him feel useful. Sometimes that meant late nights. Sometimes it meant mom staring out the window longer than usual. Sometimes it meant all the lights stayed on even after bedtime. By the third night, I was exhausted. New bed, new sounds, new dark. I remember waking up thirsty, my mouth dry and sticky. That was when I noticed how quiet the house was. Not peaceful quiet, empty quiet. No snoring from my parents' room. No hum from the television. No warmth. I slid out of bed and stepped into the hallway. The air felt colder than it should have. Downstairs, the TV was on. I knew I wasn't allowed to touch it. I followed the sound down the stairs slowly, one hand dragging along the wall the way my mom taught me. The living room was lit only by the TV, glowing gray and buzzing softly. The picture wasn't a show, just static. It made my skin feel tight. The hallway smelled strange, sharp, like something burned, but cleaner somehow. Chemical. I didn't know then that there was a fire 2 streets away. I didn't know my parents had rushed out thinking I'd sleep through it. All I knew was that the house felt wrong. I heard movement from the kitchen. She was sitting at the table, an old woman, pale. Her skin looked shiny, like it was wet or oily, and it caught the dim light in a way that made my stomach twist. She smiled when she saw me. "There you are, Evan," she said. I froze. "Where's my mom?" I asked. "She asked me to watch you," the woman said calmly. "I'm your neighbor." Her voice was gentle, but it sounded practiced, like she was reading from something she'd memorized. She patted the chair beside her. "I'll always be here now," she said. I didn't feel scared right away. Kids don't think like adults. I trusted voices before faces. I took a step closer, then reached for the light switch. My mom had shown me earlier that day. The light snapped on. The chair scraped backward by itself. The woman was gone. No footsteps, no door. Just the smell, stronger now, thick in my throat. I stood there crying when my parents burst in through the back door minutes later. My dad smelled like smoke. My mom grabbed me so tight it hurt. "There was a lady," I kept saying. "She said she lives here." The police came, asked questions, looked around. They found the back door open, jam busted, smeared with something dark and oily they couldn't identify. No neighbor matched my description. They said it was probably stress, imagination. But even now, decades later, I know better. What scared me wasn't how she looked. It was how certain she was. For a long time after that night, my parents tried to pretend nothing had happened. They changed the locks. They installed brighter lights along the back of the house. My dad stopped volunteering for late-night calls, at least for a while. My mom started checking on me twice a night, brushing my hair back and whispering that everything was okay, even when I could tell she didn't fully believe it herself. I wasn't allowed to talk about the woman anymore. "Bad dreams don't need attention," my mom said gently when I brought it up at breakfast. "But I was awake," I insisted. My parents exchanged looks they thought I didn't notice. The house never felt the same after that. I avoided the kitchen at night. I refused to go downstairs alone, even during the day. Certain smells, burnt plastic, cleaning chemicals, made my stomach drop for reasons I couldn't explain. And sometimes, late at night, I'd hear the TV hiss even when I knew it was off. As I got older, the memory didn't fade the way people said it would. It sharpened. The details stayed clear. The way her voice never wavered. The way she spoke like she belonged there, like the house had accepted her before it ever accepted us. In my teens, I tried to explain it away logically. Maybe someone wandered in during the fire. Maybe my parents misjudged how long they'd be gone. Maybe the residue was something ordinary that just never got identified. But logic didn't explain how she knew my name, or why the chair moved without anyone touching it. I stopped sleeping with my door open. Then I stopped sleeping well at all. When I finally moved out, I made rules for myself. I locked every door, even during the day. I avoided houses with unfinished basements or crawl spaces. I hated silence. If I slept, something had to be on. A fan, a radio, anything to prove I wasn't alone with my thoughts. People laughed when I told them I didn't like quiet houses. I laughed too, but I never forgot her words. I'll always be here now. I'm an adult now, with a family of my own. I've learned how easy it is to overlook small risks when life feels overwhelming. How tempting it is to assume nothing bad will happen just because it hasn't before. That's the part that scares me most looking back. My parents didn't leave me alone because they were careless. They left because they were human. Because stress clouds judgment. Because emergencies don't wait for perfect timing. And because in a quiet, safe neighborhood, danger doesn't announce itself. I returned to Willow Bend once, years later. The house looked smaller than I remembered. Someone else lived there. New paint, new landscaping, different cars in the driveway. Nothing about it suggested fear or memory or anything left behind. I didn't go inside. Standing across the street, I realized something that had taken me decades to understand. Whatever I encountered that night, whoever that woman was, she didn't frighten me with violence or threats. She frightened me with certainty, with the confidence of someone who believed they belonged where they stood. That's how real danger often works. Quiet, assured, familiar enough to be trusted. I still wake up some nights convinced I hear static downstairs. I still check doors before bed. I still teach my kids to turn on lights and trust the feeling in their stomach when something feels wrong. Because homes don't just shelter us. They remember things. They absorb moments we never get back. And sometimes, the scariest part isn't what breaks in, but what waits patiently for permission. Comfort and familiarity should never replace awareness. Danger doesn't always arrive loudly or violently. It often comes quietly, wearing confidence, counting on trust. Listening to instincts, protecting boundaries, and never assuming safety is guaranteed can make the difference between a close call and a lasting scar. Innocence deserves protection, and vigilance is not fear. It's wisdom earned.